So here we are talking about the anatomy of the thoracic spine with a view to mobilisation techniques of the thoracic spine. The important thing to remember is that the thoracic spine has very little side flexion and a lot of rotation. And you can see, here's L1, here's T12. You can see that the orientation of the facets changes in the space of one spinal level from sagittal orientation, which blocks rotation, to frontal or coronal orientation, which allows rotation, which is highly significant, for example, in the case of golf, where there's such a massive wrench of a swing. So here, this lovely movement of axial rotation is very free. It needs to be free because you have the rib investment here. Now, the ribs are obviously not shown here, but the important thing about the ribs to remember is that they actually key into the side of the spine and they actually straddle each intervertebral disc space. So they notch into the vertebral body above, the vertebral body below, and they actually attach to the side of the rib disc as well, every single rib, as well as attaching glancing contact with the transverse process as well. So the head of the rib is very, what we call heavily invested or keyed very tightly through ligamentous attachment into the side of the spine, which makes it easy if you've got a rib that's unhappy for the rib to bind up, cobble up the mobility of that segment. And you know that movement of the segment is absolutely essential because movement of the vertebra creating a pumping squash suck effect on the disc here is what helps shunt a nutritional supply through the disc, and this applies to every disc at every level in the spine. It's very important. We also have diffusion, and we also have osmosis, helping to get nutrients in and waste products out, but the physical pumping effect is very important. Now, if you lose that because you've strained a rib, particularly where the rib joins the spine, then the disc itself starts to denourish and starts to thin. Now, the other thing about the thoracic spine is that you can see here that the vertebrae, the spinous processes lie down along one another like thatches on a roof, and that pure PAs are not very effective. What therefore I much prefer transverses, and if I do PAs, I try and make sure my PAs actually give you some cephalad lift, which I'll be showing you on the real live body in a moment. Also, unilateral techniques are often not the technique of choice in the thoracic spine, again because you've got such strong ligamentous shoring of the head of the rib into the spine. So what you tend to do with thoracic mobs is that you tend to mobilise through the angle of the rib, which is right out at the side, which I'll show you, where you can use you're almost using like a crowbar technique out here to actually loosen the attachment at all those different places where the head of the rib keys into the spine in all those different ways. So I think that's all I have to say, except for one final thing, and that is that the autonomic nerve supply to the arms is mediated via the thoracic spine as well. So you've got this not so identifiable lacework of nervous network, if you like, that sort of drapes itself over this area. And this can account for, if you've got problems with your thoracic spine mobility, this can give you funny symptoms in the arm, a sort of glove distribution of the arm feeling not quite right. It can give you a sense of your hand being swollen. It can actually cause the blood vessels on the back of your hand to stand up. It affects the sweating of the hand. It affects the ability or not to cause goose flesh. These are all findings that take place if you've got some disturbance of the autonomic nerve supply to the arm. Again, we like to think that by mobilising a deficient spinal level that we'll restore that function back to normal. So here we go. The final thing to say, mind you, is that we also like, because the thoracic spine is naturally kyphotic, we are very keen on you doing thoracic back block to help open out the front of the spine here and actually create a negative effect in the discs to help open at the front here, to help suck fluid in with nutrients, and also to bring you out of your thoracic kyphosis more. And there we go.